Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Hat Historian. In this video, I will be talking about a great classic hat, the pork pie. The pork pie is a classic type of hat with a round, flat-top crown and usually a short, upturned brim that gets its name from its resemblance to a pork pie on a plate, a savory meat pie popular in England. It originated in the 19th century, but truly gained popularity during the jazz age of the 1920s and 30s, and has seen a little bit of a resurgence recently. So let us see how it evolved. The actual inventor of the pork pie is unknown, with the hat evolving from styles worn in the 1830s to the 1860s. Interestingly, much like the fedora, which I have talked about before, while it's now generally seen as a man's hat, it originally was more associated with women's fashion. Women would wear small flat, straw, silk, or velvet hats, often pinned forward on the head, with small ribbons tightening the crown, and accentuated sometimes with flowers. This simple, light hat was in some ways similar to the Senate straw hats that would give us the boater, usually with a smaller brim, and would eventually be adopted by men in a similar fashion, sometimes to emulate that nautical look, with ribbons trailing off the back. But it was still not a fully established style, especially for men, coming in many different sizes, usually marked only by the flat top of its short crown, in contrast to the bowlers and top hats predominant in the era. It was only after the turn of the 20th century that it began to establish its own pedigree, especially amongst one of its most faithful classes of people, entertainers. One of the men that can be credited most for popularizing the pork pie and bringing it out of the shadows is famous silent movie actor Buster Keaton. One of the earliest great film stars, known for his impressive stunt antics and accompanying deadpan expression, Keaton starred in many silent movie comedies in the 1920s. One of his trademarks was a distinctive flat pork pie hat, which was flatter than the usual design one sees. He in fact made these hats himself by cutting down a Stetson and stiffening the brim with a mixture of water and sugar. As the hats would often get destroyed in the course of making a movie, either on-screen or off, he went through hundreds of them over the course of his career, saying that if he only needed 6 for a movie, it was a small amount, and he would later give some away to fans. The prominence brought about by his wearing the style cemented its appeal with entertainers, and with the development of the jazz age during the Great Depression, many jazz musicians adopted the style. It really reached its peak in the 1930s, when its shape settled into the style that we now most associate with it, with a short brim, usually upturned, though sometimes snapped down at the front for more respectability, and a slightly taller crown with a flat, dished top. Less formal than the floras, also popular at the time, it was mostly seen on musicians, as I said before, most notably saxophonist Lester Young, who was honored when he died by Charlie Mingus with the song Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, but also artistic kinds, such as famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Another famous wearer was Robert Oppenheimer, leader of the Manhattan Project to develop the atomic bomb, who was often seen wearing a version with a rather wider brim than the traditional model. In the late 30s and 40s, the hat also became associated with a famous African-American style, the zoot suit. Born in the 1930s in black neighborhoods, these suits were marked by oversized coats with heavily padded shoulders, wide trousers, often with long watch chain, the ensemble in bright, loud colors. Accompanying this, usually in a matching color with a large feather, was an equally oversized hat, but often a pork pie crown with an exaggerated brim. Originating with African Americans who would wear them to jazz clubs, notably to dance the Lindy Hop, by the 40s it had spread to other cultures such as Mexican Americans, Filipinos, Italians, Japanese, and others, usually groups that were discriminated against and formed their own subcultures. After World War II, the popularity of the pork pie declined somewhat, retreating back to being the appanage of musicians and entertainers, remaining popular amongst jazz and blues musicians. This influenced the players of new ska styles in the 1960s to start wearing some as well, and it was embraced by the Jamaican rude boy subculture, who were fans of the reggae precursor rock-steady music, as well as known for being sharp dressers. Through migration, this style also spread to Jamaican communities in the United Kingdom. The pork pie also made appearances in film during the late 60s and early 70s, notably worn by Gene Hackman and Robert De Niro in The French Connection and Mean Streets respectively, lending some darker pedigree to a previously mainly light-hearted hat. Though, simultaneously, the cartoon character Yogi Bear would also wear one, so the reputation could go both ways. The decline in hat wearing in the 60s and early 70s did affect the pork pie, as it did all forms of formal headwear, though its strong presence in these niche subcultures, as well as the fact that it was not as prominent as some other forms of hats to begin with, meant that it did not hit the pork pie as hard as, say, the bowler or the fedora. Somewhat lingering underground in its traditional circles for much of the 80s and 90s, the pork pie hat made something of a comeback in recent years. It continues to be well loved by blues musicians and their fans, often being found in jazz clubs from New Orleans to New York. It is also a fashion accessory embraced by various celebrities and, in a return to its original wearers, women as well. A simple, subtle hat, it is less cumbersome than some of the larger styles and pairs with many outfits. It is often an indicator of a certain cool quirkiness, and can now be found in many different colors. But in the early decades of the 21st century, one man did more than any other to bring the pork pie back to the forefront of popular culture: the character Walter White from the popular TV show Breaking Bad. The chemistry teacher turned drug maker sports a distinctive black pork pie hat when acting as his criminal alter ego of Heisenberg, and the style has become strongly associated with him. Interestingly, the hat originally was simply worn at the request of actor Bryan Cranston, as the harsh sun of the New Mexico setting would burn his shaved head, but has become an integral part of the character, and through this, of popular culture. From a simple casual women's hat to the marker of unconventional coolness, to entertainers and musicians, to even a dark mystique, the pork pie has come to signify a certain stylish quirkiness, most often, though with exceptions, good-natured. Still used in niche circles today, it continues to mark the wearer as something of a smooth character with a sense of style. So I hope once again that you found this video interesting and will join me again soon for another hat. Until then, I tip my hat to you.